Welcome back to the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. Once again, this episode is brought to you by our friends over at Galactic Comics and Collectibles in Bangor, Maine. You can visit them at galacticcomicsandcollectibles.com or find them over on social media on Facebook and on Instagram. This episode is Dakota Brown coming back to the podcast to talk about his comic, Death Comes to the Toymaker. It's an original graphic novel that's over at Magma Comix. After a long journey and a lot of ups and downs and speed bumps and so on, this book is finally going to hit shelves here in November. Final order cutoff is September 30th, so make sure if you're interested in this book, tell your LCS that you want it so they'll put it on the order and get it in shop for you on release date. Dakota Brown is the creator, writer of Death Comes to the Toymaker over at Magma Comix, as well as he wrote a book recently in the past couple of years called Grandma Tilly's High-Tech Mech over at Band of Bards, and has other stuff coming on the horizon as well. But this is about Death Comes to the Toymaker, a graphic novel over at Magma Comix. But before you listen, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, all those things. Rate, review, subscribe over at Apple Podcasts and Spotify or wherever you find your podcasts. You can visit us in capesandtights.com for so much more content, as well as visit our YouTube channel over there on youtube.com. This is Dakota Brown, writer and creator of Death Comes from the Toymaker, original graphic novel hitting shelves this November. Enjoy, everyone. And we are live. Welcome back to the podcast, Dakota Brown. How are you?
Great. Great to be back. Thanks for having me.
You were on a list of people you should get back on the podcast. Like, it is what it is. But the thing about it is most people come back on the podcast to talk about their next project. So it's not usually the same project, but hey, you know what? It's coming out, and that's what matters at this point.
Oh yeah. I think we might have chatted about another project between, but I'm going back to my first project, really pitching that to the masses again.
Exactly. But now it's coming out in full force, and that's just pretty cool. And it's coming out honestly at the right time of year, in a sense too, which I know that there was discussions. I think when it was going to be released as a trade somewhere else, it was going to be like in March or something like that, which is a little unique and weird. So we're here to talk Death Comes for the Toymaker. A book that's coming out at Magma Comix now. But some people may have read the first issue. So let's talk a little bit about a couple things here. One is what is Death Comes to the Toymaker? And the second is that, some of the stuff we can talk about. Like I said, there's a little bit of stuff we can't talk about, but there's some stuff that we can talk about on the journey it's been to get to where we are now. I mean, so what is Death Comes to the Toymaker?
Yeah, so now that it's in the hands of Magma, Death Comes for the Toymaker is a 6-chapter graphic novel rather than a 6-issue trade paperback. It's being presented as a young adult graphic novel for audiences. It's the story of, it's all in the title there. It's Death Comes for the Toymaker. It's the story of a holiday gift giver who has a deal with death, the actual physical embodiment of death, to one day a year do the work of death, taking souls. But that day is also the day that he delivers gifts for this world's holiday, which is called Iya's Day. And it's at the same time a retelling and direct sequel to the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a lot of Mesopotamian mythos in there that intermingles with this this modern story in this world that's like ours but not quite.
Mm-hmm.
But it's being presented as, like I said, a young adult graphic novel. It kind of pushes the boundaries of young adult. There's some it leans closer to R than PG-13 in a lot of senses, but a lot of it is implications, especially on like the sexual nature. There's not that much sex and nudity, but a lot of people's insides come outside in the course of battle, so there's definitely some violence throughout.
I think, Dakota, that most young adult things that I'm at least into nowadays are on that borderline. Like, I know in the novel sphere of things, one of my favorite authors right now is Adam Caesar, who also writes comics as well. But Adam's Clown in the Cornfield series is very slasher, horrifitic, like it is brutal, and it's a YA book. And so there's that borderline that you want to push that boundary, like younger, because let's be honest, most young adults want to read the adult thing, and so having the ability to have some of it and be in that segment is pretty cool. And this is their Magma's first YA graphic novel, correct? So like this is
Yeah,
another thing you get to hang your hat on. Is not only is it a YA, but it's the first one at Magma.
yeah, and it's on the idea of content. I think it all comes down to context. If it's
Yes.
presented in such a way, it's the same items can be presented one way and another way, and one way be PG-13, one way be R, but it's all connotation and context within the narration. But yeah, it's the first graphic novel for Magma. I probably just lucked out in a lot of ways. They had an
Yeah.
opening for a holiday release, and this is a holiday book. I received my rights back from Scout Comics after the first issue came out, and uh, immediately just kind of started that hunt
Mhm.
for someone who might be interested in it, and we got a few responses and was very happy with all of them. But uh, because of the pedigree at Magma with the
Yeah.
staff there has incredible resume, being you know the driving force at IDW for so
Yeah.
long.
Magma's done some great things recently too. I think that you mentioned the creators, but like the things they're putting out, recently, the pedestrian with Joey and Sean over there and things like that. Like there's a lot of cool, unique stuff, and having things like Death Comes to the Toymaker to come out on that publisher is pretty cool.
Definitely um uh um in that it's always going to be a blend of like some horror and something else. And all the creations at Magma seem to be that plus something.
Mhm.
Like it's very unique in the just styles and themes, and I don't know how much of that is just like Magma seeking out creators that
Mhm.
might have something like that, or how much of it is just like we saw this on your feed and we want it. Because I know the pedestrian, for instance, has kind of existed in some form for some
Yes.
time, and it is. I was lucky enough to read the first issue a little bit before it came out, and it's just so wild. It's something you don't know that you wanted. It's it's a superhero story that's not a superhero story, and it's just like somehow the most marketable hero, but also the most unmarketable hero. Like, um, it's brilliant, and it's hard for me to sell it without just saying go into it without knowing what it is, and it's just a fun ride.
I didn't know I needed this until I read it,
Mhm.
and I didn't know I wanted this until I read it, and I didn't know I needed more of this until I read it, and
Yeah.
that's the same
Oh,
thing. And
absolutely.
but yeah, so that Magma thing is really cool. I mean, I think that Magma brings a pedigree to the table that maybe your previous publisher doesn't have at the moment, and that's pretty cool on that side. Is that you have actual some people that support you behind it, and we won't go too far into that. But I'm just saying that it seems like Magma cares, and I think that's one thing that I think is different in that sense. And I think because of that, I think I see more of. Maybe it's just because we're friends on social media and things like that, but I
Mhm.
see more of this promotion and solicitation for this book than maybe I had seen in the past, which is pretty cool, which hopefully would get people to read it because it is a phenomenal book, a unique book, a book that's, like I said, perfect for the season.
Oh, that's great to hear. Thanks for that. Yeah, it's honestly, I don't want to be the company suck up, but it's working with Magma has been a real thrill. And there's more coming later this month and in October for just on the like the marketing aspects of
Yeah.
things. Some things that some connections that they've made that um, I never really thought was something to look into. Like
Mhm.
Death Comes for the Toymaker already has a big um, representation at libraries,
Mhm.
both public, school, and prison libraries. I've seen talking about having it in there, available for perusal and
Mhm.
checkout. And it's just a demographic that for me I didn't think of at the time, but the numbers don't lie that libraries um, represent so much readership,
Yeah.
and it's somehow forgotten.
It's a holiday book, but not really a holiday book in a sense that it's not like Christmas and it's not like full on like your traditional Saint Nick and all that stuff in there, but it has that
Yeah.
comparison and that if you're looking for something, like there's not that much to read during holiday seasons. Like there's not like a plethora of Christmas themed comic books out there. Obviously, there's some that are floating around out there, but like this would fill that slot if you're looking to like make sure you have that. I don't know. I do a lot of that. Like, if you're this time of year, I'm always watching horror movies. You know what I mean? Like, it's like
Yeah.
that thing. Or like as you get close to Christmas, you're watching Christmas movies. This kind of fills that need if you want to at least have that.
Yeah, that's been on my mind a lot lately because there's not obviously there's movies you watch at during the holiday season. There's songs that play on the radio, whatever, but there's not like a go to comic book necessarily for individuals. Obviously, there might be something that strikes with him. Klaus came out a few years back and is fantastic. There's all kinds of appearances of a Santa Claus figure in various Marvel books, and it would be great if this became something that became a holiday tradition you pull off your shelf every year. I don't know how to do that outside of just hammering it on social media every single year subsequently. But yeah, it's definitely not a Christmas story in that
Yes.
Christmas doesn't exist in this universe, because Christianity doesn't exist in
Yeah.
this universe. The only religion that exists is the worship of the Babylonian pantheon. A little bit of Zoroastrianism in there, here and there, just as a reference to other religions of the time, but it's a very different beast in this universe. But for the most part, the only recognized religion is, again, the Babylonian pantheon, because they walk on Earth, and there's no denying that they're walking among you. They're here.
Mhm.
So it can't possibly be a Christmas story with a Santa Claus figure. So it being a retelling of the Epic of Gilgamesh, and because the issue 1 has been out for so long, I don't
Yeah.
mind spoiling this.
Yeah.
Our toy maker is Gil the Toymaker, who
Hmm.
is modern day Gilgamesh. And through a deal with the god Ea, who saved the world from the flood, that would later become Noah's flood, and so on and so forth throughout different cultures and religions. Ea, decided he wanted to have a day of remembrance for himself, and that in exchange for certain uh, saving graces for Gilgamesh, that Gilgamesh would be the one to do that toy giving. It's a separate deal than his one with Death. He has two deals simultaneously, but yeah, it's again, it's hard to call it a Christmas story, despite the fact that there's a night of gift giving, there's a tree,
Yeah.
there's stockings and gifts. All these things feel like they would naturally come about with a gift giving season, because they're not necessarily the Christian side of Christmas,
Yes.
necessarily the things that you kind of associate with like Saturnalia and other more pagan holidays kind of remain.
Mhm.
But there is a lot of overlap, so it does feel like a Christmas tale without being a Christmas tale. And issues 2 through 6, you might not really get a lot of that. It might hop into a separate story that follows that one instance of
Yes.
Ea's Day. But yeah, it's definitely gonna have that holiday vibe without being necessarily a Christmas story. Hallmark won't buy it, I'm sure.
No, no. But the thing, that's what the thing. They said. I think it fits that slot really without having to be exactly that. Like you
Mm.
don't have to have it be. It's actually Santa Claus and it's actually this. And Nick, you mentioned chapters 2 through 6 are different in that sense. It's not. I mean, chapter 1 is really that full on. You have those feelings as you're reading it, that it's like holiday themed. But it's one of those things that could fill that slot without actually having to be there. So like if someone's like, I don't want to read a stupid Christmas story, at least this would
Yeah.
fill that slot of having that ability to read something that's parallel to the actual holiday season and so on and so forth. But so I mean, it's Epic of Gilgamesh in this story. Like, what made you want to create this in the first place? Like, I mean, we're going back obviously many years now, but like, where did this come from?
Yeah, the year is 2021. I think it was. So I had written for theater and animation for quite some time. Nothing ever sold with animation, but always a pitching. And I wanted to get into comic books. It was mid-pandemic. Avenues were kind of closing with a lot of connections I had. and I wanted to make some new ones. And I, had all these properties that I wanted to bring from animation and theater to comics, to explore that. Something I always wanted to do since childhood. But I didn't feel like anything that was in my portfolio really worked for a first comic. There wasn't anything that I felt if you saw on a shelf would make you go, I need this. And kind of like the classic thing with indie comics is to, or one of the things that's very common is to
Yeah.
take, two public domain characters. You take like a princess and a horror icon and pit them together. You see it all over Kickstarter. You see it in comic shops, and it works and it's fun. And I wanted to do something similar that with two very public domain characters that really hadn't been together. And just for some reason, I thought that a Santa Claus death story had been done, but I struggled to find it. So I wanted to tell at least my version. There might be one out there that exists. I'm sure there is. But I wanted to tell my version, and I wanted to have just this be this big melange of all kinds of cultures and mythos and religions. And it was going to have a lot of like Native American mythology and a lot of African mythology, a lot of just all mythologies, but it felt like American gods, and it felt like somebody else's story. And it was a lot to work with, especially for a 6-issue series. This would have ended up being something wildly unbearable for me and audience.
Yeah.
So in the process of that, I found that I really liked the Mesopotamian mythos, specifically the creation story, and I knew I wanted that in there. And I had written around that, so I just kept going, and through the course found that the story of the Santa Claus character I wanted to tell, who was originally just called Saint Nicholas, had a lot in common with the story of Gilgamesh. Like the Venn diagram of the two characters was nearly a circle, as far as like their journey, the one that Gilgamesh completed and the one that my Santa Claus figure was going to go on. So it matched up pretty quickly and pretty easily, and hopefully in a fun way with some twists and turns that might make for a fun read.
Yeah, and you partnered up with Ryan Cody to do the art. He has the artwork on this book that is absolutely phenomenal. And there's some moments in there, like, and I don't want to spoil it that much, but like, there's some moments where fighting happens between, Death and Gil, and there's some epic and some. I feel it. My jaw almost hurts sometimes seeing some of these imagery in there. You know what I mean? And so it's a cool, it's a phenomenal artwork. Was Ryan attached from the beginning? I mean, not from the beginning, but like
right.
When you had this ready to go and it was getting ready to be published and things like that, Ryan was the artist.
Yeah, so it's so much here like fell into place very easily. It's almost embarrassing to talk about because I know it's a medium with struggles, but I just lucked out with connecting with the right people at the right time, and Ryan was one of them. I had the pitch ready to go as far as the script. I had the script ready. I had my list of publishers I was going to send it to, but no art. And I kind of worked backwards, and I don't know why. I had read Family Tree, which Ryan did colors on, and I don't know if it's just because it was fresh in my mind, but I loved the colors there. So I'm like, well, I want Ryan on for colors if I can get him, because it's he has such a unique style that's like, it's hard to pin down with words, but it's always evocative to the moment. Like he chooses very distinct colors and very distinct palettes for not necessarily a scene, but like the moment. Like in Toymaker, you'll see like he kind of goes through evolutions throughout the story. I don't know if it was a cognizant choice, but like he starts out with this very Mignola style, both in colors and art, and then it kind of softens over time as you learn more about the characters. But I knew I wanted them colors, and just looking at his stuff, I found out that he had done quite a bit of penciling and inking that I was also very quickly becoming a fan of, especially his work on the Phantom. But I just reached out, and he was available, and it was the most painless piece of blessing I could have been partnered with, because he has a very dynamic style, and again, it's from the beginning of the book, from chapter 1 to chapter 6, if you look at one, chapter 1 to chapter 6, if you look at them separately, you might think that these are two separate artists, and that's not to say he's inconsistent by any means. You just see this evolution over time, which again, I don't know it's not something I was cognizant. I didn't write it into the script. It's just a decision he
Yeah.
made to do, and it's beautiful. Again, super dynamic, super heavy moments, especially with the action. You
Yes.
really do feel those hits and those visceral moments of slashing and gore. You can feel the rips, fat and marrow, and all that jazz. I might have lost it for a second, but complete blessing to be able to work with them.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then Micah Myers is obviously, doing obviously to you and I, he's doing the lettering on it, but like,
Yeah.
is a great letterer as well. One of the elite letterers, I think, right now in the game right now. And so that's also that team of creation, a creative team on this
Mm.
thing is pretty phenomenal. Finishing it
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Micah.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have never not worked with Micah. Honestly, there's one project I'm working on where my collaborator is doing it's a co-creation with them doing art and lettering. But if I have the chance to work with Micah, I always will, because it's lettering is like this invisible work, despite the fact that it's what you see on the page. It's kind of overlooked by the average audience, and if
Yeah.
it's one of those things where if you see bad lettering, you see bad lettering, but if you see great lettering, you don't notice it, and
Mhm.
that's kind of both magical and horrible, because you want to be able to say this is fantastic lettering, but you might not be able to find those moments because it's just so smooth and so
Mhm.
um it's just so, again, yeah, it's just smooth. It's just
Yeah.
smooth and
It,
tells a story. And
it's one of those things too. So you had good partners on this creation with having Ryan and Micah, because I feel like your writing was a highlight when you needed to be a highlight. Scripting is physically had has a highlight when it needed to be a highlight. You let Ryan's artwork speak when it needed to speak, and then Micah lettered what it needed to speak lettering wise, meaning that like if you look at some
mm,
pages, there's like one or two speech bubbles on it, letting the artwork breathe, letting the artwork tell the story, and then there's a script in there, and then the lettering. So it's one of those things when I'm reading the book, it's like a comfortable book. I had this, and I don't usually say the name, and I won't say the name, but there's a creator out there who just I feel uses too much of actual script and actual like
yeah,
wording and actual speech and speech bubbles on the page that I'm just like, okay, I read novels. Let me read a novel. When I'm reading a comic book, I want the artwork to speak for it too. I don't want it just to be a speech bubble speaking for the characters in the comic book. I want the artwork to speak for itself. I want some sound effects and things like that to speak for me, instead of having the writer just be like, okay, I'm just going to write a big huge novel or
yeah,
artwork around it. And so I feel like there's moments where you're like, okay, I'm going to put speech bubbles in here, and Mike is going to do a great job on that. And then I'm also going to let Ryan's artwork speak for itself, because he knows what he's doing, and he has your script, and he has your, what needs to be on each page, and it works. And I think that's one of the things that worked well for me, is that it was like a breathable comic book, whereas it wasn't a task to read. It wasn't like, oh shit, I'm talking to Dakota. I need to read this book again. It was a breeze. It was an easy read, meaning that not in a bad way, in a way that makes me want to read it over again. That's, I think, a big thing. You mentioned
oh, that's
grab off the
great.
shelf every year. I think there's two things in that. One, it being a graphic novel will allow that to happen, whereas
Mm,
single issues only. If someone goes out there and buys all six single issues, they're maybe less likely to pick them up in the future.
right,
That
right.
makes any sense. Most of us who are single issue collectors are like, oh, bag board that, put it on the shelf, don't touch
Yeah.
it. And whereas a graphic novel, you're more apt to like pull it open, sit by the fire, I don't know, sit on the couch and read it. But also having it be an easier read, in the sense that it wasn't a lot of work to read, makes it also a more achievable to have me read again. I think that's a big thing. And that's what the libraries come into it. I think a $20, $15, $20, $25 trade graphic novel
Mm,
nowadays, you can't buy them all. Like you can't. Like
right.
no one can afford that. I mean, people who can afford that aren't buying them. That's the problem. And so all of us who can't afford it, going out and buying every single one of them, having the ability to go to a library and read it is a big thing, and I see that more and more. And so I think all
Mm,
those pieces put together, Dakota, makes it for like a good book.
yeah. Oh, thank you.
Just, I guess that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Oh, I appreciate that. I think it's really just an attempt to respect the medium, because
Yeah.
if you take the dialogue and put it to a film script just like as it is, and say this is we can just translate this easily from comic to film, it's not going to work, because
Mhm.
it's designed for comic book. I always think about like around, I think it was like the Empire Strikes Back, when Hasbro was like, well, they're not making a movie for a while, but we want new figures out, so we're going to
Yeah.
do what we're calling off-screen vehicles and off-screen
Yeah.
characters. So you might not see it on the film, but like in the Battle of Hoth, you look over in
Nice.
the trenches off-screen here, and you'll see this, and this is
Yeah.
what's fighting the Empire coming in. And with comics, it kind of feels like that to me. Like you're going to get everything you need from the dialogue and the action. I don't tend to do a lot of narration in a
Yeah.
comic. I don't know what the decision is there. Honestly, it's just it might just be I always want a good flow when I want that page turn to feel like you want to do it. But um, oh, I was saying, but yeah. So the dialogue's there, and the
Yeah.
action's there, the lettering's there, but there's more to it
Mhm.
that might be inferred or implied based on either the art or what have you. And that's kind of left to the audience
It's,
to kind of interpret themselves.
mhm.
Because, like I said, I don't do a lot of thought bubbles either, and I don't do a lot of narration. So these internal moments with the characters, I
Yeah.
typically want the audience um, to kind of fill in themselves, and as much as possible put themselves in the place of the characters. So yeah, it's I think it's just an attempt to respect the medium, and hopefully is enough to keep the story going, but at the
Yeah.
same time, um, you know, have the reader put themselves in a little bit.
Uh, would you have handled this differently in a sense of like writing if you were new from the outset when you wrote the first issue or first chapter that it was going to be 6 issue chapter graphic novel, or do you think that I mean, obviously worked out. I don't think
Oh yeah.
that it was like clunky to the point where you're like, there's like, oh my gosh, this is definitely written as a 6 issue miniseries, and now we're a graphic novel part of it. But I just didn't know if you would have flowed it differently or done something differently or maybe approached it differently knowing from the beginning that it was going to be a graphic novel.
Yeah, it's hard to say,
Okay.
because I was, it was written as an issue to issue
Yeah.
miniseries. I knew it was 6 issues. I knew it was going to be 22 pages an issue because that's a manageable indie
Yeah.
comic length. Um, so it was always designed to, end an issue on a moment, whether that's a cliffhanger or just some kind of moment that makes the reader want to get to the next issue, because that's, as a comic writer, I think that's the best we can do, whether it's turning to the next page or the next issue. You're wanting the audience to move forward. So there would definitely be something similar in the sense that, yeah, I want you to be excited about the next chapter, but the length of each, you know what became chapters started as issues, the length
Yeah.
would probably be different.
Mhm.
Um, it, it just depends on the allowances of the form. There might be some chapters that were like 2 pages. There might be some that were
Yeah.
like several. But like you look at traditional graphic novels, like that run of graphic novels from Marvel, starting with Dazzler and like
Yeah.
um, uh, God Loves, Man Kills. They don't have necessarily chapters. I don't believe it's usually just one solid
Yeah.
story, just in a longer format. And obviously, Watchmen was 12 issues. 12 issues, 12 issues. So it's
Yes.
presented as essentially a trade paperback, but all everyone considers it a graphic novel just because of the scale of it. Um, so it's a weird one to answer because there's no set
Yeah.
format to the medium. Like a graphic novel, I guess when I think of a graphic novel for comics, I think of Bone.
Yeah.
And there's pretty consistent lengths of the chapters there. Um,
I mean, it probably would
so
have been
yeah.
harder to go the opposite way to have it been written as a graphic novel and then be like, okay, let's make. We're actually going to do a 6 issue
Yeah.
miniseries in this because then you would have had to break things in a certain way, add pages,
Mhm.
subtract pages, whatever. Or it may have been like issue one was 3.99, 22 page comic book, and issue
Yeah.
two was a 4.99, 30 page comic book, and issue three was a, like it could
Mhm.
have been this weird thing, and going the opposite way probably would have been harder. But yeah, maybe you would have done 20 pages for one chapter and
Right.
24 for the next chapter, and then have it be 7 chapters and one be 5 pages long and something else only be 15. And so yeah, I could see that. But again, you're right. There is no set medium, and that's the
Yeah,
weird.
it's a
It's
weird
one of
one.
the cool things about comic books, but also one of
Mhm.
the frustrating parts about comic books because they're just like there is that thing where I mean I just talked to Jacoby Salcedo and Julio Anta about their Blue Beetle graphic novel that's coming out, and it's like oh it's phenomenal, but like I'm a big single issue person, so like
Mhm.
now I have this want for this graphic novel that's going to have to go on a shelf instead of in a it's just like and then some of them are digital and some are webtoon comics and some are web
Yeah.
it's no actual format that's like standard and even nowadays with Distillery and Image doing the Last Mermaid, there's not even a size of a comic book
Yeah.
format anymore either. And like in Last Ronin, being a random size, and then like I mean, like nowadays, obviously there's a reason behind it, but it's just kind of funny. There isn't a regular thing to do, so I think it's kind of cool that this is coming out. And I have a single issue. It's harder to see its way up there, but I
Okay.
have a single issue of Death Comes for the Toymaker, but I'm also gonna get it in a graphic novel, which is pretty cool. You know what I mean? Like
Oh, that's good to hear.
yeah, I honestly wish they would do that more, to be honest with you. Put out issue one, even if it's greenlit already. Like, even
Mhm.
if you're like, we're gonna do six issue or a six chapter graphic novel, it's coming out in November. But in July, we're gonna release issue one as a single issue to kind of
Yeah.
promote it and get people to, pre-order it and stuff like that. I think that would be pretty badass. So then you could still get the single issue all the time and then also get the graphic novel full story when it comes out. I think it'd be
Yeah.
cool.
I'm a big fan of that as a reader, definitely.
Yeah.
Because that was the original plan with with Scout with Death Comes for the Toymaker, and it was issue one, and then the full complete graphic novel a couple of months later. For whatever reasons, which I'm unaware of, honestly.
I don't think
It,
they
it
know
didn't.
why. So no
I
offense.
will. Yeah.
You don't have to say anything, but I'm gonna say I don't think they knew what they were doing.
So whatever reason it didn't happen. But I do like I'm still attracted to that idea of like an issue
Yeah.
one followed by a graphic novel, because at the end of the day, a lot of comic readers are collectors.
Hmm.
It's kind of hard on the creator because it
Yes.
might feel
Yes.
like you're losing 5 issues of revenue,
Hmm.
but readership falls off so much, and depending on print costs,
Yeah. I mean,
it's a toss up. But
technically, you're
I
like almost guaranteed that if someone buys issue two, they're buying issue five in the sense that if it comes out in a graphic novel and someone buys it,
yeah,
whereas someone might buy issue two and not buy issue five. So you really are losing money in the sense that you made the money off of that second issue, but you didn't make any on the fifth issue. So yeah, it's one of those you never really know. Hindsight would be 2020 if it worked or didn't
yeah,
work. You'd be like,
and
oh,
I like the
cool. We sold a
I
bunch of issue one, but we didn't sell any of the graphic novel. So we still lost money on this comic, but but yeah, I could see. I just know a lot of people out there who are trade waiters.
mhm.
Would do the same thing. They buy issue one and wait for the trade. If they like issue one, they'll buy the trade when it comes out. So if you just set yourself up in that position to just there is no issue two. It would piss me off. If it was like during the pandemic when they did with Hawkeye over at Marvel, where they had a Hawkeye miniseries and they had 4 issues of the miniseries out, and they just said, "Screw it, we're not even going to release the fifth issue. We're just going to put it in a trade." And I was like, "Screw you, man!
Oh, I
All
didn't
of us
know about
comic
that.
that's completionist there. It's just like it's a 4 issue or 5 issue miniseries. Only four of them ever came out in single issues. And then it was in trade. I was like, oh, you got to at least complete this, man. There's so many people out there probably banging their head against the wall, saying, "What the
Yeah.
hell?"
Has it been completed since?
I think they just put it down in a trade. I forgot. It's been so.
Oh
It's
man.
funny actually. It's been this March will be 5 years since the beginning of the pandemic, which is
Yeah.
absolutely asinine in my opinion that it's been that long. But yeah, so I don't remember because it was that moment when they shut down production and shut all that stuff down.
Yeah.
I'd have to look into it again, and it might have been 3 issues out of a 4 issue series or 2 out of 4 or something like that. But I know it was like they released it on like the Marvel Unlimited platform in a single issue, so you could read it digitally.
Mm.
But they never actually printed it. And so that ended up being a graphic novel or trade only. So you could get that fifth issue, you had to buy the trade. That would
Yeah.
piss me off if they did it that way. If they did 4 issues out of five and they didn't print number five regularly and just, oh, if you want to see how this finishes, you got to buy the trade. That would
Yeah. I
piss me
mean,
off.
I get it though. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a terrible, horrible time. Obviously for
Yeah.
an Earth, but as well as
For
an
everyone. But yeah,
industry.
for the
Yeah.
publishing industry, it's a little difficult too.
Um,
Yeah.
but that's especially to have something that's released every month and have it like kick in at a moment when several things are released. You have to make tight decisions. But yeah, if that was the intention from the beginning, that would have been terrible.
Yes.
But I can also see the cynic in me says like, I could see somebody doing that in the future, like releasing 3 out of 4 issues and be like, well, if you want the last of it, here's the, you know, $25 trade
Yes.
we're going to sell you.
Yeah. Well,
And
I thought
I'm
myself,
sure
I'm
that
like,
wasn't it, but
if you know, Marvel at the time was probably still with Diamond, right? Because they went to Penguin
mm,
Random House after the pan or during the pandemic, after the pandemic, right around that time. You should just
yeah.
like put a pre-order out to LCSs and be like, this is a pre-order only, meaning that we're with literally whatever number of orders are ordered, we're going to print. And so that the fifth issue could be done for those people who are, or you know, wanted a completionist and be like, I'll get it. But then that would end up happening is there'd be 5,000 copies of that printed, and it'd be high value comic book because it was only
Mm,
5,000 copies printed.
yeah,
And so then the comic book wouldn't even, the completionist people wouldn't even keep it. They'd sell it on eBay.
that's wild. It's a difficult medium, especially
Yes.
when it's the only medium where like something is released twice in different formats, like on a guaranteed
Yes.
level. But it's
Well,
just because that's what the audience merits, really.
yeah.
Some people like their singles, some people like their trades. I'm a trade guy myself, and I wish I wasn't a lot of times
Yeah.
because I miss the I miss my pull box. I'll still
Yeah.
buy, you know, individual comics when I can, when I get out, and I usually go wild when I do. Um, but like it can become unmanageable when there's so much good stuff out there that you want.
It's
So I'm
it, so the single issues to me make me think of like payment plans versus a buying it all at once. It's like even though it costs me more, if I buy $5 comics and the trade's only 20,
mhm.
but it's only going to cost me $5 every month for 5 months or $20 once. Maybe I'll just do the single issues because then you know then I only have to pay $5. So
Yeah.
like part of me goes, wait, I'm losing money here or spending too much money, and I have to wait. But no, yeah, it is one of those things that the marketing of it behind it is can be helpful. You know, having 5 issues to market a comic book. So if this did come out, you know, but now you've had X amount of time to market this book now because
Yeah,
it's
about
been
3 years
so
now.
long. Exactly. But yeah, so now it's going to be coming out in trade or graphic novel format,
Mm.
and your cover artist is it just Joe Picardo did the cover of
Uh,
this?
he did
No.
the cover of the Scout Comics
Okay.
release,
Yes.
but my cover has always
Yes.
been Ryan Cody's
Yes.
cover,
Ryan. So yeah. Okay.
and I'm glad to have that featured here because that was the one that was here from the beginning, and for whatever reason that wasn't what came out from previous publisher,
Yes.
but you know that's Ryan told a story with a single page, and that's enough to sell a comic right there. Just his incredible work.
It is. It is. Now I forgot about that. It was the opposite. I was thinking it was the opposite. That it was that he did that one. But yeah. So yeah, the cover is Ryan Coates. It's a beautiful
Mhm.
cover. The trade dress, the graphic, the logo is pretty awesome too. It fits the theme of the book loosely in that sense of it being somewhat of a holiday book. So it has that kind of like feel to it. But you know, it's coming out November 19th, which is exciting. I mean, so now you're getting to this point. Now, like, you know, you had this first issue come out, you know, from a previous publisher, and then you were gearing up for the trade release,
Mhm.
and then that didn't work out, and you had this probably some sadness. You sat in a corner, stared at the corner for a little bit, you know, contemplating your career in comics, and
Yeah.
then and then Magma picks it up and decides, no, we're going to release it. We're going to release it as a YA graphic novel. It's coming out in November. Yada yada yada. What's it been like now? Like now that this is like finally coming to fruition, you're actually going to have these on the shelves. You're going to be able to tell people they can buy it. Has it been exciting? Are you nervous? What's going on in your head right now?
Yeah, it's one of those where like it's been a long process, you know, between uh you know the original pitches and contracts of Toymaker and now its final release. It's I think it's been has been 3 years now. For various reasons. There have been other comics I've had published since then. There's
Yes.
been, you know, contracts I've signed since then for things that are coming out in early 2025. Um, there's been so much happening because of my start through Death Comes for the Toymaker and partnering with Ryan and Micah that it's weird that it hasn't. It's just odd because so much has happened because of it.
Yeah.
Um, but when somebody says, like when a publisher says, "Hey, send it to me,"
Yeah.
I say I can send you a link. You know, it doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
exist yet. The proofs are coming in I think early October. So there's going to be a physical item for me to hold very soon, and that's very surreal. I think I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. You know,
Yeah.
because it's I trust Magma so
Yeah.
much because they're again, their incredible pedigree and everything they've done with their company since they started releasing just this year. Um, but so much has happened with Death Comes for the Toymaker that I feel like I'm sure this is the one. This is it.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. But you know, fingers are crossed. It's really surreal. So yeah, it's in comic stores on the 6th of November, and
Yeah.
then bookstores on the 19th.
Hmm.
Uh, and I I have to just trust that, you know. And that's I'm not the only one with that story, and it's not exclusively uh, it's an industry wide thing, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, there's always a lot of doubt, even when something is ready for like it's in previews world and it's in lunar and you see the dates there. It's not always guaranteed, and that's
Nope.
nothing to do with necessarily a publisher or the creator. It's just something might happen with the distributor, something might
Yeah.
happen with the paper company. There's a lot of factors going, a lot of invisible work going into comics that's beyond publisher and creator. Obviously, both of those have a lot to do with release dates, obviously. Um, but I am beside myself with the fact that I was able to team with Magma on this because it's
Yeah.
I just hope I do them right because like I said, it's a team of creators and a team of uh, employees at the
Yeah.
publisher, from editor in chief to marketing to design to CEO. Even though I know Denton doesn't like the term CEO, but he very much deserves it.
Yeah.
Um,
So at
it's
some point you gotta take that title because you got I mean you basically
it's got to
is that
accept that you're
job. You gotta
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's surreal, and there's no words for it, and I hope it gets in people's hands, and
Yeah.
I think Magma is going to be the place to really do that properly.
And yeah, and I think that once you have these proofs in your hands, and once you have them physically in your creator copies, your comps and things like that in your hands, it's going to be like, okay, this is cool. It's actually happening. Because I think I mean, there's chances of any other publisher, not any other, but other publishers, not speaking of one specific one,
Mm,
that if it ended up in their hands, it may still not have been come to fruition. It may have been solicited for. And I've been on like Lunar's website and other websites where you're like looking every week to see what's coming out that week, and
yeah.
the same books in it every week because they just push it to the next week, and then they just push it to the next week, and then they just push it to the next week, and you're like, okay, this book's never coming out. And so to actually see this happening is going to be pretty cool. And you got your rights back, and that's the big
Yeah.
thing I think in the whole situation is you actually get to publish this. Not the publisher you're coming from, but the other
Mm,
publishers that have been out there in the past. I've talked to other creators who were still waiting from
yeah.
other publishers to get things back, bankruptcies and all these other different crazy world of publishing. Is the fact that they're just like, if I get it back, cool. This is gonna be awesome when it does come back. But if I don't, I'm just reserved to the fact that it's never coming back and that's gone. And so at least you
Yeah.
have it, and that's a big thing. That's a
Yeah.
huge, success on your side. And so next thing is physically getting it in your hands. That's
Yeah.
the next big thing for you.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that I'm very happy with, to have the
Yeah.
rights back, obviously. But I know that other people out there aren't as lucky and
Yes.
might not have been as lucky for 10 or 15 years
Yeah.
from whether it was an independent publisher or
Yeah.
maybe a member of the big two who
Yep.
something was created for through a work for hire agreement or
Yep.
whatever, and was technically an original creation. So it's tricky, and
It
it
is, and it's I guess the only way to make it perfectly 100% sound that you own everything and you can do whatever you want with it is to do it yourself funding, and that's just not
yeah,
usually easy. It's not possible sometimes, and sometimes the marketing prowess behind a publisher, it helps sell that extra few books that maybe you wouldn't have sold if you did it yourself. Can make or break whether or not the book's successful, or make or break what you do next. And so having
yeah,
someone like Magma behind you is going to be huge, I think, in the long run. I think now they're going to say Dakota Brown, Death Comes from a Toymaker from Magma Comix is going to be a bigger thing for you than just, if you had to just be like, oh, I kickstarted this, and so on and so forth. Not saying Kickstarter's bad. I do
oh no,
appreciate
no,
Kickstarter, and Kickstarter's awesome. I just
yeah.
think that this having Magma next to your name is probably going to be beneficial to you in the long run.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I, I wish I had the prowess to do a Kickstarter and do it well. Um, the people who are great at Kickstarters are great at Kickstarters, and
Mhm.
it's Charlie Stickney and Charlie McElvey, the two Charlies, and Travis
Yes.
Gibb are all
Yes.
fantastic at Kickstarter. So many others as well. But my fear with doing one, it was an option for
Yes.
taking Death Comes for the Toymaker to Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it was on the docket there, and I had done some math and looked into it, and it might have happened,
Yeah.
but it would not have happened well, I don't think,
Yeah.
because a lot of times, it Kickstarters can get lost in the shuffle. It's hard to get excited about a Kickstarter from someone who had previously done a Kickstarter. Actually, I'd actually done a
Yes.
Kickstarter for Death Comes for the Toymaker when it was in its early days at Scout. It didn't work out. It wasn't the most glamorous Kickstarter, and it might not have had um, the marketing and support that I was hoping it would have. But at the end of the day, people did get excited with it, and bought the first issue based off that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to meet those numbers, especially now. And Kickstarter is always going through changes. So, and even if you fulfilled everything, obviously Kickstarter's it's a not-for-profit creation machine a lot of
Yes.
times, because you want to give your audience what they deserve, and just the numbers don't match up with how the world is.
And the best ones out there are the ones that the thing's already done and in hand, for the
Mhm.
most part, or done and ready to be sent to the printers,
Yeah.
completely done, wrapped up. They add that thank you page to the back of it. They do the proofs, they send it to the printers, and they get it done in your hand within a couple of months. Those are the best and most successful ones. And sometimes it's just not feasible. Sometimes you need that cash from the Kickstarter to even to pay the artist, to pay the
Yeah.
writer,
Oh yeah.
all that stuff. So it's a difficult thing. And I just think there is no, again, it was same thing with size and type of comic
Mhm.
and format it's in and length and all that stuff. There's no set thing in the comic book industry. And I think that in the end, you did the math, you did the research and going, you know what, Magma's the best option for this. Let's do Magma. And I think it's
Mhm.
going to be successful in that sense. And I do think that it's going to reach a broader audience in the sense that my LCS is going to carry it, which even if you had
Oh
a
great.
publisher or an LCS option on the Kickstarter, those don't always get to the LCS owners. Like they don't always find the right people. Like maybe you're people in the shops. And then the other part of it, my LCS is like, well, are you backing it? I go, yeah. He goes, well, I just lost a customer then. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like if you're going to back it, then you're not going to buy one from me, which means that I lost the customer that I would potentially sell it to. So if 5 of my people back the project and I buy 5 copies thinking that you 5 will buy them, that I'm just to sit on them. And so, hopefully people stumble upon it and things like that at LCS, but like my LCS is going to carry it because they believe in Magma. They read the first
That's good to
issue.
hear.
They were excited about it. And so those kind of things for someone maybe doesn't have a massive name to themselves that might sell that thing having the Magma name. Someone goes,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, I love Pedestrian. I love some of the other stuff that Magma's doing right now. I'm definitely going to pick this up, especially again, people want to read graphic novels right now. I think that's a huge thing. I think people want that one contained story that they can buy and sit and read. And again, it fits nice on the shelf and you can grab it again. Uh,
Yeah.
I just got this one in mail, actually. It's pretty sweet. The advanced copy of
Oh, I've seen that going around. I haven't read it yet.
it's absolutely phenomenal. But no, but this is one of those things that this is one of the ones that I will read over and over again. My son was so pissed. I have a 3-year-old. He was so pissed that he couldn't read it. I was
Oh
like, no,
really?
you can't read that. I go, it's scary. He's like, but I want one. And I'm like, I can understand why looking at the front of this that you don't know this
Yeah.
is blood, that this might be red paint. But it does look like something that you would read, and I really apologize that you cannot read this one.
It's just my jam bag leaking.
So it's just it was kind of funny. But yeah, I think graphic novels are huge. And I think here's the deal. November 6th at local comic book shops and November 19th at bookstores everywhere, which is again a huge thing. It's another storefront that you get to sell these things at,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool. It's perfect for the holiday season. So you can buy it for someone on November 19th at your local bookstore or November 6th at your local comic shop and wrap it and give it to someone for Christmas. See? You're not going to
Yeah.
do it with single issues, most likely. I mean,
No,
I
no.
don't think I've ever got a single issue outside of a like key issue or a signed issue. I
Oh
haven't
yeah.
gotten like issue 1 of a comic book series that's coming out for Christmas. I think that would be very
No.
taking a shot in the dark there. My wife would be like, I hope you like it. I bought it in October, so issue 2 and issue 3 are probably already out and you missed them. But yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a fun you know, having it out in a graphic novel, I think is going to do it wonders too. I think in the long run, which is pretty cool. I think you
Yeah.
agree.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no it's hard to add to that because it's all
Yeah.
completely true. I
Yeah.
don't I'll be doing signings at like Books a Millions and Barnes and Nobles throughout the southeast soon, and signings at local comic stores and a few conventions here and there, and it's all very surreal because, like I said, it's been it's a 0 to 100 definitely from creation to now. It's been a long wait, and I've really been excited to get this into people's hands properly, and it's going to be it's going to be a flip of a switch to have it suddenly out and have to really hit the ground running with all the meet and greets and
Yeah.
hopefully excited reviews and whatnot. So very thrilled, very terrified. But I hope everybody wants to read something that a thrilled and terrified
Well, I think
weirdo
it's
wrote.
yeah, it's one of those things that like buying a single issue from you at if you're tabling at a con and you buy issue one off of you, say you were doing this
Mm.
monthly, and they liked it, they may have a harder time trying to find issues two through whatever.
Right, yeah.
And this is one of those things where they can go to your table and be like, oh, this looks cool, and they can buy the complete thing, get
Mhm.
it signed by you, whatever, which is pretty cool. And again, I think the big thing to me is bookstores, and I think that there's a bigger and ever growing section of graphic novels and trade paperbacks at these bookstores like Books a Million and Borders and things, that are just growing and growing and growing. And I think having to be able to have this potentially on the shelves there is pretty cool, in my opinion. And they're heavier to carry around conventions. I'll tell you that much. They are,
Oh yeah.
they do way more than a single issue.
Yeah. It's something I'm taking into consideration. But at the end of the day,
You're
it's
like, oh, I'm gonna be so strong after this. Bringing
it's
in my boxes.
I'm gonna be a beefy, proud comic daddy, just tooling around my wares, knowing that the wait is worth it. Both the wait,
Yeah,
WAIT, and the
in the way.
WEIGHT. Yeah.
It's all worth it in the end. But yeah, and anybody else is coming up, we're actually gonna post this week. So like the 18th, and so FOC I think is September 30th.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty
September
sure. So that
30th.
you have time, like go to your LCS, email them, message them on Facebook, snail mail them, and actually probably will get there in time, and
Mhm.
tell them that you want this because then they can get it in their FOC and get it ordered. But if you miss it, say you're listening to this on October 1st, still tell your LCS because they still could order it and put it on the shelves and get that stuff. It just happens to be that it might take them differently or have to do it a different avenue
Yeah.
or something. So, but just don't think that because you missed FOC, I mean you can't get it. Still tell them you want it.
Oh no, not at all. And of course, it's so exciting to be like in retailers, but
Yes.
at the same time, support your LSC or LCS as much as you
Yeah.
can. I just had a minor stroke there. Support your local comic store as much as you can, and if they have the capacity to order it, grab it there. It's going to benefit them more than it's going to benefit a multi-million corporation out
Really?
there.
I will say it's cool too, because again, the whole being in bookstores, I'm a big fan of bookshop.org. And so if
Mhm.
you are a person out there, you're like, I don't even know where the LCS is because you're not really into grabbing single
Yeah,
issues here and there or whatever. Oh, you have a local bookstore. That's the great thing is that you now have added so many different points of sale. But
yeah.
bookshop.org also supports local bookstores as well. And so
Oh,
like
does it?
for example, you go to bookshop.org and you buy it on there, you can select your local store. So, like in my area, Briar Patch is my local bookstore, and they get a portion of the sale from you just buying it on this website, and then this warehouse ships it to you. And so it is
Oh,
available for
that's
pre-order
awesome.
on there on bookshop.org. If you do that, you have to wait until it ships on the 19th because
Yeah,
it
yeah.
comes out later at bookstores. So if you want it 2 weeks early, then you have to go to your LCS and get it because they'll have it there. Hopefully, every LCS across the country has a copy on their shelf, right?
Well, if people like the massive emails I sent them recently, I don't know. It feels like a lot of those might be spam folder fodder, but very hopeful that
My
got
if
some
you're sending it to
excitement.
LCS owners, my LCS owner loves hearing from creators
Oh, it's
pitching
good to
their
hear.
books because it's just like it feels like okay, this person cares. It's not just I'm gonna hope that the world finds this book somehow.
Yeah.
And so like Tony Fleece still emails local bookstores or
Oh,
local
that's
comic
great.
book shops, and being Stray Dogs and Feral famous and local band famous, and actually like honestly My Little Pony famous. But yeah, he still emails out to LCSs to say, hey, I got a new book coming out, and so it's pretty cool in that sense. But yeah, you can FOC order it. So tell your comic book store that you want it. You can buy it at bookstores. Death Comes from the Toymaker from this Dakota Brown here, Brian Cody, and Micah Myers at Magma Comix. I'm so excited for people to read this. I mean, I've been excited for people to read this since the issue 1 came out because, and I don't know we're gonna be able to do it this year for Christmas, but I was thinking to myself, maybe sometime in the spring, we might read it for book club at my local comic book shop. So you'll get some sales off of that hopefully. But it's a book that we were like waiting for it to come because we read issue 1. We're really excited, and I'm like, I told my LCS and I'm like, I got to read the whole thing. So there. No, and so I hope people read it because I'm excited. I've been excited since the first issue came out, and I'm now glad that it's actually coming to fruition, and I'm going to be able to have a graphic novel in my hand. I'm so excited for you myself. So I'm sure you're excited, but I'm excited over here too.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah.
So you also have, you have your comic, Grandma Tilly's High Tech Mech, available random places too, I'm sure. You have other things that are going out there. Any last things you wanted to, pitch or say or do or whatever on here before we go, wrap things up?
No, I mean, like I said, support your local comic stores as much as you can these days. And
you're busy, right? You're doing stuff.
Yeah.
You're working on other stuff. Some of the stuff you can't
yeah,
say.
that's the thing. So
okay, you are busy. That's all I'm worried about. I wanted to make sure you're busy, because if you're not busy,
no, yeah, that's a problem. No,
Yeah.
You'll see more from me from this year. Hopefully, an announcement in the next couple of weeks about a new miniseries. Maybe some licensed things down the line. Who knows?
Nice.
And just keep an eye on my almost dead social media.
I realized my personal one was dead so much. My Instagram, when I have a 6-month-old, just turned 6 months old yesterday, that all like my last like 10 pictures or 8 pictures were like collab posts that my wife had posted. Every month you post a picture, like 1 month, 2 months, and it was like 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, then a random picture. Then it was like 4 months, and then a random picture. Then 5 and 6. It was like all the posts that literally had posted in the past 6 months have been the post that she actually posted that she collabed with me. And so I was like, oh, my Instagram is pretty dead right now.
Oh yeah. I'm just trying to find which one is the landing point for the comics community, and I don't know which one. It seems like Blue Sky might be the one today, but as soon as anybody finds out what the hit social media is for the comics community, find me on. Right now, I'm just on X, really. Twitter.
Well,
let's call it Twitter.
That's the thing. I see some people like that are only still on there, and then some people that are only on Threads, and then only on Blue Sky, and only on Instagram, and it's just like you find yourself, you don't really know what to do, and so it's a little harder. But I would just say follow people if they're on everything, follow them on everything, and so you don't miss something if you're on those things. That's my big thing. If you don't post on Instagram as much, but you're posting on X a lot, then you'll find it. That's my big thing. So just follow everybody on everything, and then you'll be fine for now. You don't have to go on it all the time.
I'll say, go find Magma Comix on every social media. They have tagged me at some point, I'm sure. You can find me through there, but find Magma and find all the other great creators who are doing just incredible work there. They have big things coming in the future, some big announcements soon, I know, that some I'm aware of, some I'm unaware of, but there's some really cool stuff coming in 2025 especially. So keep an eye on them, and you can sort through and find my goofy beggings for attention on their page as well.
There you go. This book is Death Comes for the Toymaker. It's a graphic novel, a 6-chapter graphic novel by Dakota Brown. You can you have to order it at LCS. You can order it at bookstores. You can order it online. Whatever you do. Here's the deal: support your local bookshop, local comic book shop, but get it. Period. At that point, it's like, do that length. Local stores, but if you can't have a local store or don't want to do a local store, just buy it. That's all I'm saying. Just buy the book, read the book. It's really it's well worth it in my opinion. But yeah, I appreciate you taking the time out, Dakota, to come on here and chat your comic. I know you were excited as much as I was. I know we had to delay it because of some stuff going on, but like, it happened to be. I almost had to delay today too, man. Like my son was up all night last night. I was sleeping on his hard floor. I have an air mattress in his room. The air mattress had a hole in it, and so it just like started to deflate on the floor. I ended up on the floor. It was this whole thing, and I'm just like, woke up this morning. I'm like, how do I want to do life? But then I got like, I sent you an email last night or whatever. I got the email back from you. I'm like, oh, I'm excited to talk now. So I was like, I'm gonna die here soon, probably around 4 o'clock here Eastern time. I'm gonna be like, But it was been fun, and I'm glad you came on. So
It was a blast. I was in the same boat with my son last night, but thrilled to chat comics. So hopefully all children sleep tonight,
yes, exactly. Well, my
and
wife was like, "Do you
daddy,
want me to pick up another air mattress because the other one had a hole in it?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know." She goes, "I bought it just in case." I'm like, "Okay, good," because it's just one of those things that like I just needed to sleep in between the times he wasn't sleeping. That's what I needed, and sleeping on the floor does not allow you to do that. It reminded me of being like in high school, going to a friend's house on the weekend, just being like, "Oh, I could sleep anywhere." No, I can't. 38 years old, I cannot do that anymore, Dakota. That's not
no,
possible.
I was the bathtub sleeper, and that's not something I'm interested in doing anymore.
Oh,
I thought it was the
I want.
funniest thing.
Here you go, man. That's new comic book idea. I want a horror story called Bathtub Sleeper.
Bathtub sleeper.
There you go. Next
I
thing,
love
next
it.
thing on your list. But yeah, that's just Dakota Brown. I really appreciate it, man. We'll talk soon, and we'll come back on. Excited for people to see it. We'll have a review up of the old trade up here at some point too. I think sometime next week or something like that. I think whatever it
Awesome.
is, but we'll put it out there for you too. But yeah, thanks a lot, Dakota. I really appreciate it.
Hi, thanks so much.